Hey everyone, happy Friday. Welcome to the pre-market show for Friday, November 1-3. Okay, so gang, we have a Friday here. I think this is the first time since we sort of officially launched the show that we're trading or talking about trading on a Friday. And I think the first thing to really establish is that I'm not active. I'm not super active on a Friday. When I look at my watch list and I'm flipping through what it is I'm interested in doing, most of what I'm interested in doing is going to be very short term in nature. So let me share with you something that dates back to my active Forex trading days. And that is Fridays are half days. I don't think they're necessarily bad days. I think traders forget at the end of something, whether that be the end of a day, an end of a week, an end of a month, an end of a quarter, the end of a year, the end of something has a distinctly different psychology than the beginning of something. So beginnings are easier to trade as a general rule. So what we want to remember, and let me get the chats here. So good morning. Yes, good to see you all. Good to see you all. Good morning from California. It's early in the morning. Sound should be good. First time Friday for, yes. I mean, we've had since we've gone official, this is the first Friday that we're really going to discuss that. I really would rather you not put the pedal to the metal on a Friday. So let me get the charts up that we want to take a look at here this morning. And let's see, what's the indicator at the bottom of the chart? Ollie, this is something that one of our, that's actually the history of the JT trend. We call it the JB, named after the person who coded it based on the work of the JT, which is based on the work of my use of exponential moving averages. So this is the history of the JT JT trade flag, and we have a multi. So the reason we call it's kind of neat. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole here, but I can track the history and the current reading of the 8, 13, 21, and 34, my JT trend. I can trace the history across numerous symbols, which is pretty darn cool. So yeah, that's something that we just started using. I just started using this about a week ago when a member shared it with me. So that's what that is. Happy Friday the 13th. Anyone have trichodectophobia? Any trichodectophobics in the room? Not I. I don't know where it's lucky number 13, unlucky number 13. It's just the day. I don't like Fridays. I can tell you that much. I don't care what the date is, but yes, happy Friday. All right. So, hey, from Dubai, I'll tell you what, that is one of the places. There's two places. My husband and I were sitting this morning having some coffee, and before I got into the pre-market show here, and he's like, where would you go if you could go somewhere? I'm kind of a hermit. I like to work. I like to stay here in my bat cave. But I saw a picture of Lake Como, thinking that might be something that is beautiful. Lake Como, Italy, and then Dubai. I've been invited to go to Dubai a number of times, and I just haven't done it. And that is definitely high on the list. High on the list. So let's go back to half-day Fridays. Why in the Forex world do we do this thing called half-day Fridays? We do it because once it's 11 a.m. Eastern and the European markets are closing and the US markets are in the midday doldrums and the UK markets are in the process of closing an hour later. So you've got Paris and Frankfurt winding down, then you've got the UK winding down, and the US is having lunch, essentially. You really are seeing in the Forex world the largest financial center leave the market. Now, you can also see that the volatility, the historical volatility in the markets will contract after 11 o'clock. They'll just start to contract lower and lower and lower after 11 Eastern. They'll spike into the close. They'll widen one more time into the close, and that's it. So what do you do on a Friday? I think when you're looking at a Friday, and we really want to look at the economic calendar as well. By the way, how many of you saw yesterday when we had our central bank palooza, when we had Jerome Powell scheduled, as well as Christine Lagarde and I can't recall, someone from the BOE, Bank of England. How many of you noticed, and who was it who was speaking from the Bank of England? Andrew Bailey, Christine Lagarde, Jerome Powell. speaking at 11:45, how many of you noticed the markets were willing to rally into, as I endearingly call him, Kapowell? They were really willing to rally into Kapowell, and then we saw about a half an hour after the event, the market started to sell off. So the economic calendar really did shape, time really did shape a lot of the behavior. Today is Friday, pretty quiet. We've got a core PPI number that came out about 35, 40 minutes ago. I'll do a first come, first serve type setup there. Those of you that are unfamiliar with it, it's a simple volatility, very simple volatility fade. We did it in crude oil inventories yesterday. Those of you that were in the futures room, you remember we walked through the buy shortly after 11 a.m. Eastern to fade the crude oil inventories number. And so those are the kinds of things that I'll look at when we have different economic events, but pretty quiet on the economic calendar. Not that there isn't a whole slew of other things to talk about, but yeah, pretty quiet. Somebody asked me, well, why was crude oil inventories on a Thursday? Because of the bank holiday on Wednesday with Veterans Day. And then why, or would you fade natural gas storage at 10:30? I'm not a huge fan of necessarily trading natty gas, but yes, it is something you could day trade. So check with your broker if you're a futures trader, because one of the things we advocate a lot of for our futures traders and Simpler Futures in that room is use the day trading margin when you can. There's two brokers that are pretty popular in our room, really three. Infinity, which from what I've seen over the years and years and years that I've been trading, best day trading margin, excellent service. TradeStation has good day trading margin. And then we have quite a few traders that are starting to use Tasty Works. So just reflecting what our room does. Trade through whomever it is you want, but the day trading margin is something that's going to allow, especially sort of smaller accounts, to engage in day trades, not riskier, but in terms of requiring less capital. So keep that in mind. The very thing that a lot of traders love about the options markets, the leverage, the lower cost, that's something that you can think about when you're day trading your indices, day trading the currencies, is day trading margin. And I would highly recommend using that responsibly, but using that. Okay, so that's the calendar. And I want to really mention that we talked about the calendar yesterday as well. And, think about how Jerome Powell affected the pre-1145 market and the post-1145 market. And the pre-1145 market for us was a nice rally in certain indices that we were looking for. Gap fade, for those of you that watched yesterday's episode, we did, in fact, buy the Dow. Gap fade. It took the scenic route, no doubt, but it did head up to nice targets. And we were pretty much able to wrap up our day trading day by 11:30, which is exactly how I like to do it. I don't day trade all day. Back to Friday. It's really important that you do not think you want to day trade all day on a Friday. So the first question is, do we have gap psychology? We do not. This is not the gap psychology that I would embrace for that early morning setup, neither on the S&P nor the Dow, and not the NQ. Okay. None of them are taking out the 4 p.m. close to the upside, as well as yesterday's regular trading hour high. So unless I have both those criteria met, I don't have a dual confirmation gap. And that's the only kind of gap that I'll fade. NASDAQ barely met that criteria. So one thing you'll notice, for those of you that have a curiosity about when do we gap and go versus gap fade, gap and go is usually going to work better when the dual confirmation criteria is not met. So we have sort of a half confirmation gap criteria, or a very slight, and I would call the NASDAQ just below dual confirmation. So it's very close, but it's not. You'll notice there's sometimes a gap and go type reaction. The fade comes from the extreme of the gap. And what's more extreme than opening below or above the close, and respectively below or above the regular trading hour high? So look for those extremes. Okay. So what have we covered so far? Economic calendar will, in the case of Powell, it will dictate direction. And economic calendar, in the case of crude oil inventories, natural gas inventories, these headline number type data releases, those will also set up potential trades. I like to trade intraday fades of the initial reaction, the initial surge. I think it's sometimes called a drive of the release. And then finally, do we have gap psychology? No, we just don't. So there's no early morning fade. All right, so let's tackle some questions here. Oh, one other thing that I have to mention is that Pitbull low. The Pitbull phenomena is, I guess, probably most akin to a seasonal. It's not a technical setup. It's a seasonal or a tendency, the way I like to call it. And that is the second week of the month, each month, the second week of the month, going into Wednesday, going into Thursday, going into Friday, the second week of the month tends to put in a low in the market. If we're gonna hunt and peck for a low, that Thursday, Friday is a pretty good time to see it. Thursday's oftentimes sort of the focal point of it. It could be Wednesday, it could be Friday. I've noticed Thursday is sort of your focal point, if you will. So in those 3 days, it's not uncommon to see maybe a minor low or a wick established that we tend to see higher lows after. Okay. With that being said, the next thing is, do we have a buy opportunity that is accompanying that low? I really want to emphasize that, because a lot of people think, well, we just buy the low that we see on a Thursday, or we buy the high after, or we buy into the low after Thursday or Wednesday, whenever that low is, expecting new highs to be made into Friday or into Monday or even into the third week of the month, which is options expiration. By the way, the Pitbull low name was, I just have a terribly itchy nose this morning. The Pitbull low was named after a trader who was written about in the first Market Wizard book by Jack Schwager, and his name was Marty Schwartz, and his nickname was the Pitbull. So Marty Pitbull Schwartz, which is actually probably one of my favorite interviews from the first Market Wizards, which is a great book. So, which I recommend everyone check out. It's inspirational for sure, and it's just a great read about really classic traders. This book was published in the late 90s, or at least that's when I picked it up anyway. So some of you might know Jack Schwager just released a book called Unknown Market Wizards. I haven't picked it up, but it was cool to see a couple of trader friends that I've got that were included in the book, which is really neat. It's definitely a thing to be immortalized in a wizard's book by Mr. Jack Schwager. So if we have that Pitbull low tendency that comes in, again, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe Friday, a lot of traders will buy into that with the anticipation that we will see movement stronger into Monday and maybe into the end of next week and going into options expiration, which is another Friday I highly recommend most people don't engage. So no gap psychology, half day Fridays, Friday the 13th, if you observe such things. And we want to really focus on, for me, my end of day timeframes. What's really going to be a bigger focus for me after I day trade the morning is going to be, what do my end of day timeframes look like? In other words, positions that I have built in names like FedEx, that I have some positions in healthcare. What do those positions look like? And are they in a position for me to scale out of? Would it make sense for me to reduce my size, go to a break-even stop? Am I hitting targets? Remember, the end of something, the end of the day, end of the week, psychology is very different than the beginning of a week. A lot of folks will ponder whether or not they want exposure through the weekend into Monday, the uncertainty. They'll debate whether or not they want to maybe close the trade out, reduce position. So you can see a very sort of tying up loose ends type psychology on a Friday, actually at the end of the day as well. So Yeah, Friday the 13th in 2020. Exactly. It's been Friday the 13th every day in 2020 for in some respect. All right, so a couple questions here. And I've been mostly doing some Q&A with this conversation. So let's see if let's tackle some questions. All right, so let's see here. And hopefully we can take a look at some of these charts. I think you need a bigger, yeah, you think so? You don't like my Viking, so small for a Viking, right? I love my coffee. Black as well. No cream in this thing. Yeah, we go black coffee. This is probably one of my bigger ones. You think I need a bigger one? Let's see. Can you mention why I anchor the VWAP to weekly versus the session? Jordan, so on my intraday charts, so this is a question about where I anchor my volume weighted average price. End of day timeframes or daily timeframes, I'll anchor to a rolling 10-day and the first of the month. On my intraday, I'll anchor to 2 a.m., 7 a.m., and 9:30 a.m. So it depends on what time frame I'm looking at. So I do have a session anchor, just on a 1-minute chart. Great question. Thank you. Let's see. On my end of day trades, hey there, Danny. On my end of day trades, how many do I usually have on at one time? There's no number. It's just a matter of risk and it's a matter of capital. So there's no number. There's no set. Do I ever have more than 25% of my account in the market? My max is 50. Do I usually have more than 25? It's funny. Usually I find my exposure is right around 35, 25, 35%. But 50, I will not use more than 50% of my account, to your point. And so there you go. As far as how many end of day trades, it just depends because they all have their triggers. But I will tell you this, Danny, it's not uncommon for it sort of to happen like an avalanche, because remember, I'm a pullback exhaustion trader, and we tend to see those pullbacks or exhaustions happen, sort of cascade all at once. So it's not unusual for me to have a very busy day of entries on a few days a week, a month, maybe 20, 25% of the month. The rest of the month, I'm waiting or managing trades. So my trades tend to come in these big groups. And I think that's a function of the fact that sectors will pull back and trigger stocks within those sectors or the sector itself, overall market corrections. Those are my opportunities. Those are my blue light specials, right? So thank you for the question. All right, next up is, how do I determine a bullish or bearish day when the European market does the opposite of the US market? So Jorge, well, bullish or bearish day is going to be two things. One is, what's my directional bias? And that's not determined necessarily in the morning. That's determined by the daily. So I've had predominantly bullish directional bias since last Tuesday. The other thing is, in terms of directional bias, is, well, a little bit of first come, first serve. If you're open to being a two-way trader, which end of the range do we get to first? If we trade down to the bottom of the range, I'm not a Momo trader. I'm not a momentum player. Lower lows are not an invitation to short. For an exhaustion trader like myself, lower lows are an invitation to find out if there's support and can I buy. So higher highs are not an invitation to buy. Higher highs are oftentimes going to be a question of, are we at the top of the range and can I short? But since I have bullish directional bias right now, the bottom of the range is what I'm focused on. So I'm not determining that first thing in the morning. I should know that well before the bell rings. And I do. And I have since Tuesday. It's predominantly to the long side. So thank you for the question. By the way, if you're a two-way trader, it's a different conversation altogether. Right? If you're a two-way trader, which I am not, I don't advocate it. I think it's the gateway into twitchy trading, and you just don't want to do that as a general rule. Let's see. Translate the times to your local time zone. Yes, Adam. So I'll always talk in East Coast time. That's where I am. And I think that's really the focal point of the financial markets, East Coast time. So yeah, just translate to where you are in the world. Yes. Can you use USO? Scott, I stopped using USO after the USO changed the composition of the ETF. So you guys might remember when crude went negative. Unbelievable. And at that point, the USO ETF was basically fighting for its life, and it completely changed the composition. So before, USO was a reflection of the front month of the futures contracts, and now it's just a hodgepodge. So I really don't use the USO anymore. I'll oftentimes use the UGA, the unleaded gas ETF. It's a proxy, and LNG or UNG for natural gas. And I would, if you want to go the ETF route, thank you so much for bringing that up. 1000%. Karthik says, thanks for bringing Toby. Oh yes, Toby, my dear friend, Toby Mathis from Anderson Advisors. Yes. It's definitely something. Yeah, Karthik, I'll talk about that more in the coming days, but what they do, the service that they provide is just, they are really out of the box, common sense thinkers. Yeah, so what Karthik's referring to is we had a company called Anderson Advisors do a free webinar to educate people about entities that traders can use to trade through, rather than always seeking the moving target of being able to qualify for trader status. And I'm referring to taxes and asset protection and so forth. But yes, I've been learning with Anderson, been aware of them since 2005. You can kind of see on my bookshelf back here. I actually do have Toby's book, Tax Wise. I've got their Trading as a Business course. I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge, huge fan. Yeah. All right. So gang, that is it. I've run over a little bit, but again, thank you so much for joining us. Fridays are going to be a little bit more Q&A oriented. Again, think about the half day. Think about the fact that we're in that pit bull low phenomena. Going into next Friday's options expiration, where I'll probably sound a very similar warning as what I'm doing right now. So if y'all have any questions, all right, if y'all have any questions, please feel free to leave them at Facebook or YouTube. I've given you all a text that you can email or text your questions to me. Feel free to use it. Otherwise, I wouldn't give it to you. Yes, that text comes to my phone. So feel free to ask. And I guess it's time to get to work, right? So I'm going to head on over to the Simpler Futures room. I know some of you are heading to the Simpler Options room, or wherever you go now to handle your morning. I hope you got a better grip on just some ideas that can help you become a better trader. Thank you for being part of our community. I've got quite a few people that are joining us, and it's awesome. Thank you for the questions. Toby Mathis, Robert, and Anderson Advisors. Toby, you can reach out to support at Simpler Trading and ask them to send you the replay. Anybody who wants that, or there is a sign up. There is a sign up. And you know what? If you want to, for those of you that are interested, let me see if I can't find that for you guys, because there was a sign up for that. And then at least that way you can, if you want to, right? Again, it's just, I love my partner here in the office. I was actually in London at the time, and I've been wanting to, get Anderson Advisors over to help our members, and she made that happen. And this was years ago. And you know what I'll do? I'll try to find that link. Oh, here it is. Here it is. I found it. So head on over to Simpler Trading. Oh, this is super easy. simplertrading.com/tax-replay. Here, I'll put it on the screen for those of you that are interested. So simplertrading.com it's completely free. Toby's amazing. My sister has her entity with Anderson. I have my 3 entities meaning my businesses with Anderson. You can check that out at simplertrading.com tax-replay. So thanks for mentioning that you enjoyed it. I mean, I wouldn't know otherwise. So thank you for your feedback, and we'll definitely have him back. But we have the replay right on the screen. You don't have to even put in your email address. So please do educate yourself about this, gang. We've done this because it's just that important. All right, I'm going to shut up now. Enjoy the rest of your day. Head on over to your rooms. Let's get to work. And I will see you all on Monday. All right, my friends. Have a great one. Be good to each other.